Okay, does everybody feel settled enough to begin? Excellent. I would like to welcome you all to the kickoff of the Eastside Community Dialogues and to recognize that we are gathered here this evening on the unceded territories of the Esquimalt and Songhees Nations. So thank you to the nations for allowing us graciously to be here. On that note, with us this evening, we have Chief Andy Thomas of the Esquimalt Nation who's joined us for the evening. So thank you, Chief Thomas, for joining us. I am going to briefly introduce why we're here and what we're doing, and then I'm going to take us through where we're going to go from tonight. But before I do that, I wanted to make sure that everybody knew who your elected representatives are on the East Side, and also who the Public Advisory Committee members are who helped to put this process together. So I'm going to start by introducing the elected officials on the East Side Select Committee, and when I do, just please stand up so that if anyone wants to speak with you, they can. So from Saanich, we have Vic Derman, Richard Atwell, Judy Brownoff, Vic Derman, and Colin Plant. Oh, Vic Derman's on my list twice, is that right? Sorry, the list isn't in order of municipality, so I'm jumping around. From Victoria, we have Marianne Alto, Ben Isaac, Jeff Young, and myself. And there are councillors here from all of the municipalities as well. And from Oak Bay, the representative to the East Side Select Committee is Mayor Niels Jensen, who's here as well. I want to begin by listing the members of the Citizen Public Advisory Committee. And this is a group of 10 people, volunteer citizens, who have been working really, really hard every week with the Select Committee. In fact, the volunteers meet more than the politicians, and who have worked really hard to put together this process for you tonight and the process that you'll all be engaging in the coming weeks. And if these folks could also stand up and really just be recognized with a round of applause once they're all standing. So we have Sorrel Marks working with Oak Bay. For Saanich, we have Ray Travers, Bill Mumford, George Klima, Deb Dixon, and Don Sutton. And for Victoria, we have Trevor Davies, Natasha Thambaraja, Brian Gilbert, and Jim Knock. So if any of those folks who are here, a round of applause. And those citizen representatives would be really happy to get your feedback about how you find this evening, because they're going to be refining the process as we go. Okay, so what's going to happen tonight? I'm going to speak for not very long, as I've said, about where we are and where we've come from, what has changed, and where we're going. And then I'm going to invite Amanda Gibbs from Public Assembly up here to give what she calls a transparency briefing. Basically, that means to let you know what we're going to do with the information we gather with you. And then I get to get grilled. That's how I see it. You have up to half an hour to ask anything that you need to ask of me or of the Select Committee about this process, about anything you need to know that will help you participate. Anything you need to know, anything that's not clear. So we've set aside up to half an hour for questions and answers. If we don't need all of that, that's okay. If we do need all of that, we're going to take it. And then after that is really the meat of the evening, where you'll be working with facilitators, and we have trained, experienced public engagement specialists at each table. And there you'll be working through some questions where we begin to gather some input from you. Now, many folks in the room have been at probably countless workshops like this on sewage treatment and resource recovery. And we thank you for coming back yet again. And this is where I'm going to get into where we've been, why we're here, and most importantly, where we're going. As I was leaving my house this evening, the 12-year-old who I live with said to me, "Good luck, and remember that you are loved." And that's the spirit with which I'd like to begin this evening. Good luck to all of us, and remember that we are all loved. We're all loved by our families who care about the environment and are okay with us spending an evening in the next 2 months taking care of it. We're all loved, believe it or not, by each other, even though we might have divergent opinions of the way to move forward. And we're all loved by our residents, both present and, most importantly, future, for taking this project seriously and for finally getting it off the ground in the next year. So good luck, and we are loved. Okay, so why are we here at all? It's very easy to look to the past and point fingers about all the things that went wrong and all the people whose fault it was. It's easy to point fingers at municipalities, at politicians, at chairs, at staff. It's really easy to look back and point fingers. Not useful, in my opinion. What we know for sure is that when we tried this process before, a site or sites were chosen, and then we asked the public, what do you think? And we all saw what happened when we did that. It didn't go over well. And it doesn't mean that anybody did a bad job. It doesn't mean that anybody was wrong. It doesn't mean that anyone made a bad decision or had malintent. It just didn't work. And it was a collective failure. And in the wake of that collective failure, beginning tonight and in the next 2 months, the next year, we have a collective opportunity to succeed. So what we're doing tonight is beginning a process of dialogue on the East Side, Saanich, Oak Bay, and Victoria, about what matters to our residents and small business owners about this project. What's important to you? That's step one. And tonight, they're gathered on the West Side, engaged in a similar process. What's going to happen next is we're going to take the feedback from tonight and begin to put it into criteria, filters. And then, and this is where probably if we do this successfully, the whole region is going to win some kind of award, because what we're going to do with you in the coming months, and particularly in late May, is each municipality, Saanich, Oak Bay, and Victoria, are going to put forward a series of what we'll call technically feasible sites. And there will be a lot of them, as you would imagine. And then we're going to ask you to use the criteria that are generated tonight, as well as other criteria that will be introduced. And we're going to ask you to help us narrow down a large number of sites into sites that could be politically supportable, that people could live with and hopefully even embrace. And so those workshops will happen in late May. There'll be 1 or 2 in Victoria, 1 or 2 in Oak Bay, 1 or 2 in Saanich, so that the residents of those municipalities will have a hands-on, sleeves rolled up opportunity to weigh in and literally help us decide. Once those sites are narrowed down, based on criteria, based on support of our technical team, we'll then come back to you in another workshop and say, here's what we've narrowed down to based on what we've heard, where do we go from here? And then, and this is really, really important because it's a regional plan, then we'll come together by the end of June at the latest with the West Side and what their residents have come up with as possible sites. So we've got an ambitious work plan ahead of us for the next 2 months, but I would say that as Victorians, we're an ambitious lot, and we can do this. And the reason we're moving at this clip is because this project has been talked about and talked about and talked about, and now it's actually time to take action. I'm not one who motivates based on fear. I prefer hope. And my hope is that by March 31st, 2016, which is the ultimate timeline we're aiming for an approved and zoned site and an approved and zoned plan, because that deadline enables us to keep all of the funding that's available to us for this project. My hope is that by that time, we will be gathered here or somewhere else, potentially in a bigger room, letting up a collective whoop of excitement that we've done it. So that's what we're doing. That's where we're going. You will have opportunities to ask more questions, so I'm sure there's lots I've left off in these introductory remarks. So I will wish us again good luck, ask us to remember that we are loved, and with that I will invite Amanda Gibbs from Public Assembly to walk us through a transparency briefing. Thank you.
So really tonight we have a number of key goals. We're here to basically share information about the project, to share information about the process and the timelines, and then we're really here to just start the conversation. This is not a zero-sum game where this is the only chance you're going to get to comment. As Director Helps / Mayor Helps said earlier, this is really the beginning of this conversation, and in your guidebooks you'll see there are going to be lots of opportunities for you to comment and participate fully. So we're going to go through a few of these things. What's changed in this project? A few things have changed, and we've really tried to give you as full a briefing as we can in the briefing note that we've provided. But just very briefly, we know that there's stewardship by the Eastside Select Committee and the Westside Select Committee. A group of elected officials are working with the CRD and with citizens to lead the way forward. We have really changed the decision-making framework, so the process that we're working on is based on many of you whom I've met over many months of working here, is based on an IAP2 format. And for those who aren't familiar with that, that's the International Association for Public Participation. And what we're really trying to do is to provide as many and as clear opportunities for the public to participate and to really go beyond just receiving information. This isn't a transmission exercise, this is a transmit and receive. And so this two-way communication and this opportunity to get deeper into a collaborative way of working is really a hallmark of one of the things that's changed. And then finally, there are some timelines that are driving this process. It's a very ambitious timeline. And one of the things that the Eastside Select Committee has done is to really try to support a process that will allow basically all the decision makers to keep the door open to existing funding, but not to close the door on good solutions that might emerge. So if people are asking about the timelines, that is one of the reasons that we're working so hard and so fast. So just very briefly, this is our framework of involvement, and you'll have this with you, and certainly happy to answer questions tonight and otherwise. But the idea is that we started very early on. The Eastside Public Advisory Committee, the citizens whom you met earlier, we're meeting almost weekly, and these are tough meetings. We're grappling over not only the content, but the best way to talk to people, and this group is working so quickly and so hard to try and work with me and others to try and form this process. So this is really one of the cornerstones, and a difficult one and a challenging one, but a good one for this process. We have our hallmark, our early meeting this evening, but in your guidebooks you'll see that we're going to host, we're going to replicate this meeting 3 times at community centers in Victoria, in Oak Bay, and in Saanich, so that there will be opportunities during the day when people might not be able to get childcare or to make it here. We're also committed to, we're going to be having a survey that's going to be live next week that will ask many of the same questions that we're going to draw out through dialogue tonight, so people will be able to go to the website, answer survey. We will probably be doing some opinion research so we can get representative samples from all the communities. We're going to try and gather as much criteria, the priorities, the clear priorities from citizens as we can. We're going to take that information, and I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce my colleagues from Urban Systems, who are a planning and engineering firm who are based regionally in British Columbia. And we have Dan Huang, who's here from Victoria, is based here in Victoria, Chris Town, who is a liquid wastewater expert, and Aaron Lee, who's also an engineer and a planner based in Vancouver. And this team is going to be working, we're going to be working together to bring detailed options, sites, scenarios, and to really take the decision-making that it often happens behind closed doors and bring it to the public. And so at the end of May, as Director Helps mentioned, we're going to be taking sites that have emerged through these processes and take them out to the public and lead a conversation about what they mean, what the options are, and to really get into the nuts and bolts of this. So this is an opportunity for citizen experts to meet subject matter experts and to collaborate on finding solutions together. From that, we're going to emerge, we're going to report back as quickly as we can on what we're hearing, and that's where some collaboration, our desire is to collaborate with the West Side and to really look at what they're servicing and to make sure that we can have a regional conversation as well as a sub-regional conversation. So this is an opportunity for us to open up some questions. We have 30 minutes allotted for this. And I'm sure that there'll be an appetite to do that. Just in terms of sort of some norms, we'd really like it if you've got a question that really duplicates what someone else has asked. If you'd like to register that that's important to you, even if you're just able to say, I agree, or I've got a +1, if that comes up, if you really feel that you want to sort of hammer that point home or you feel that you agree with that, we really want to ensure that we're asking questions, that we're not speechifying because we're trying to surface information. And I think to hold the space that we heard that we're all loved and we all are here in a spirit of respect and collaboration to go forward. So with that, let's turn it back.
Thank you. So the microphone over there, I believe there are 2 microphones that are open for questions on this process, on why we're here, on what we're doing, on anything that will help you be able to participate better and draw out information for others. And we'll just go back and forth between microphones. So starting over here, yes, sir. And if you could just identify yourself and what municipality you're from.
My name's David Langley and I'm a resident of Saanich. There's a question I asked at the last meeting of the Eastside Select Committee, which relates to the sewage which is produced from citizens of Saanich. And 70% of that sewage flows into the Eastside system and is present, to describe off, and is presently discharged through the Macaulay outlet. The question I asked is that I know the West Side Committee is looking at all the sewage on their patch. So who is responsible for the 70% of sewage that emanates from Saanich that finishes up in the Eastside sewage system? Is this group we're here today and this committee going to take responsibility for all the sewage treatment for the Saanich area?
So my answer is potentially. So what we're doing, and I can't speak for Saanich.
Potentially?
Well, can I follow up with an answer, an actual answer? What we're doing in Victoria, and I can't speak for Saanich and Oak Bay, is we're identifying sites that could hold just the city's sewage, just the east side sewage, as well as the region sewage. And I know that they're doing the same thing on the west side. So that's why it's really, really critical that whatever happens here, whatever happens on the west side, that all of the sewage in all of the 7 municipalities involved is treated somewhere. So it may be that if the west side decides off they go, then we come up with a solution here on the east side that does indeed treat all of Saanich's sewage. So the honest answer is we don't know what's going to happen with those flows, but we do know for sure that the process that we're engaged in on the west side and the east side has to come up with an answer to that question. Thank you. Okay, seeing no one at the other microphone, Chief. Go ahead, Chief Thomas.
Chief Henry Thomas, Glamwell Nation. I guess I'm here to, I feel like I'm sitting in an awkward position because we're supposed to be meeting with the west side and I came to an east side meeting here, but you know, I think for a long time I've been trying to figure out how do we get a voice on this CRD, because CRD has been making decisions that affect our community They've been doing that for years. Even through the first 2 sewer lines that runs right down Admiral's Road, we didn't have any input. And I guess my question is, where do First Nations fit into this process? Because when I hear that you're talking about Saanich, I wonder where is Sayook, where is Sycamore, where is Pockwitchin, where is Sartla? And for the west side, it's the rest of the nations. Where is Esquimalt, where is Pockwitchin, or Pacheedaht, where is Souk, where is Beecher Bay? Where do we fit into this process here? Because, you know, we're on the outside. We don't get any. We don't hear about this until all the plans are made, all the decisions are put into place, and they come and they tell us that they want to consult with us, and then they put all the papers on a table and they say, well, this is what's already been decided. I mean, you know, I'm struggling, you know, because this is our homeland, but we're kept out of the decision-making process. We have to be part of it. We can't be excluded anymore. But I just needed to find out, where do we fit? How do we fit? Or do we fit? You know, I think those are the questions I asked.
Thank you, Chief. I think what you've identified is a big flaw in the way we currently do business at the CRD, and the CRD has struck a task force to take action and get First Nations representation on committees, to have CRD sit at the board, First Nations sit at the board. My understanding is we need to lobby the provincial government for legislative change. But in terms of the sewage process, Chief, there are lots of ways I think that you and Esquimalt can fit in, both to this process, but I would say most importantly on the west side. And I know they're having an event tonight and an event tomorrow. Go see Mayors Desjardins and Hamilton, and express the same thing that you've expressed here. And I know Songhees is very involved in that process, and there's obviously room for Esquimalt as well. Yes, okay. Next question or comment.
First of all, I'd like to apologize for butting in earlier.
No problem. We're human.
Thank you. Secondly, my feelings are kind of the same as the previous speaker. I feel completely excluded. I feel that there is a process in place, and I feel that decisions are already made before the public is really let in. That's what I feel. I hope I'm wrong. Oh, sorry. Jack Etkin. I live in Victoria. So, I mean, your opening remarks, where you kind of set aside everything that's happened to some extent, I don't think we can do that, because if the same people are still running the process, then I think the rest of us may be in big trouble. We narrowly averted a huge disaster where they were going to spend $1 billion on a project that had no environmental benefit. We just escaped from that. I know we can do better, but there are possibly actors in the game who don't have our best interests at heart. That's how I feel. So that's what I mean when I say I also feel excluded. I think we're being stampeded in time. I mean, there's no need, I don't think, for, you know, suddenly a process starts. I don't even know the technology that's being talked about. I don't, and yet everything's going to be done by the end of June. Why? In the newspaper today, they said, well, we have to get that federal money. I mean, the story we hear is not necessarily the truth. We cannot necessarily accept the story we're being told.
Okay, I'm gonna, so I think you could talk for a long time, and there are other people who want to speak. So, but let me address your first fundamental.
Okay, let me just finish with
okay.
one sentence then. That's how I feel. I mean, if this is a fair and honest and democratic process, great. But I feel we're being kind of herded into making decisions when, I mean, I don't know what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I completely understand how you feel. You know, and again, my job as chair of this Eastside and as chair of the core area is not to look backwards, it's to look forwards. But at the same time, I appreciate that the process, some of the processes that have happened before have left the public feeling excluded, have left the public feeling stampeded, have left the public feeling left out, have left the public feeling like decisions were already made. And again, it's no one's fault that that happened, but it's going to take a collective leap of faith to believe that we can actually do something different here. I can tell you for certain there are no decisions made already about sites or about technologies. I can tell you that for certain. Because if there were, I think that everyone here has better things to do with their time than go through a charade. I certainly don't have time for a charade. We've been grappling at City of Victoria Council with exactly this question. We've got a large range of sites. We have no idea which ones the public will find acceptable or not. So no decisions have been made. This is a new era. It's a new process. And we're all in this together. So, but I completely understand how you feel. And it's going to take rebuilding of trust, a reconciliation to believe that we can actually do it differently. And that's what we're trying to do starting tonight. Okay, next question. That microphone is not too hopping, so we'll keep going this way. Yes?
Hi, Dirk Irwin. I'm actually from Shawnigan, but I do work down here.
Thanks, Dirk. Welcome.
Thank you. I'll just give a bit of background on how I feel about it first, so you know where I'm coming from. I've been following this for years and years, in the newspaper at least, and so I don't think we're being rushed necessarily. I think we might be dragging our feet because this has been going on in, you know, we've been bandying this around for, what is it, 20 years at least, or something like that. So I think it might be time to actually stop the talk and maybe actually do something. I'm all for the idea of treating sewage. It's kind of a stupid idea to dump raw sewage into the ocean, and anybody that thinks that that doesn't have a negative effect, well, they should put on some diving gear and take a little swim at the outlet. I've canoed around the coast in some places, meaning Victoria. It's always a wonderful thing when you see this upwelling in the water and you think, wow, what's that? Let's go explore it. Oh, it's sewage coming up, which I've found several times. I wonder if Clover Point is still in the running as a possible location. It seems from my viewpoint that most of the sewage already goes there, if I'm correct. That's the main outfall, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So I'm not going to answer the question about Clover Point because that's exactly the process that we want to avoid, saying it could be here, it could be here, it could be here. What we've asked municipal councils to do is to identify technically feasible sites, which will be made public in a systematic and concerted way very shortly in order to have the conversation about is Clover Point superior or is somewhere else superior. So there are a whole bunch of sites still in the running, and those will be revealed. And you know, you're going to have to help us figure out which ones are best.
Okay, I would pray that they consider Clover Point technically feasible.
Excellent. All right, so hold that thought for about 3 weeks. Okay, over here.
Hi, I don't think anyone knows this mic is over here.
Oh, sorry, Mark, before you start, for people who have come in and haven't found a seat yet, there's lots of room at tables. So if you'd like to join a table, if you've just joined us, this is a Q&A, and then we're going to have a short or long workshop. So for those people who need a seat, there are seats. Sorry, Mark.
My name is Mark Gardner. Thank you for this evening. I have maybe a different approach than you've heard from the previous speakers. I'm not really interested in how everybody feels. I'm interested in the principles upon which this project is going to go forward. And in the package I see tonight, I do not see some of the principles. I don't see any principles. And I think we should work on that tonight. And by principles, I mean beyond technology that's going to be accepted, we need to know the impact of any technology being considered on the residents nearby, I think that should be a real priority for all of us and for the team, and I don't see it in anything.
Thank you.
It's not there, but I don't see it.
No, it's not there. Principles aren't there. And that illustrates the point that the other gentleman made. We haven't even decided on principles yet, never mind sites or technology.
And I would hope that we come back to people once we have these principles.
Absolutely.
Because I think my number one principle I want to see is that. And that means that instead of just looking at the technical feasibility of a structure being on a particular piece of land, we have to look at the siting of it regarding not only ocean flows, but air flows.
Absolutely. And
that's right. I know in Europe, landed in Norway a few hundred years ago, they made sure that emissions did not go onto the population. And I did not see any of this kind of discussion over the last few years, and that is very much of concern to me. So I would like to see a principles-oriented, a chance for us, the public, to participate in a principles set forum at some point.
So let me be really, really, really clear about what's going to happen when this question and answer portion stops. You're going to dive in at your tables on principles that matter to you about this project. That is almost the sole purpose of tonight, to come up together with, so by criteria, emissions, effect on residents, proximity to residents. This is an open conversation, and that's what we're going to come back with to start to use as filters.
My only other short question is, where is Vic West? Is that east side or west side?
The sewage flows go to the west side.
I know they do now, but who is considering it right now, the east side group or the west side?
This question and answer period is really useful. So let me try and clarify. Both sides, west side and east side, are considering a range of options, from just treating their own community's sewage to treating sewage for the entire region. So it could be that same with the question about Saanich, it could be that Saanich and Vic West flows, if things don't come back together between west side and east side, that those flows are redirected to the east side. It could be that they're redirected to the west side. It literally, and this is really the point, everything is being considered at this point.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, over here.
Yes, just quickly, I once asked a person I greatly respect about community projects. My name is Sue Hiscox. And I said, how do you implement this in a community where there's so much controversy or conflict? And he said, well, first of all, you design the project, you post it around, you ask for feedback. And I think together with the right technical design, using influence from other places in Europe that have already had these systems working for years, then you can get into the community feedback system and set the priorities that way. I'd be concerned about time, because for 10 years now, people have been reporting there's sewage on the ground of the ocean, which is suppressing, of course, life there and changing things. And the finances in stages, I think, can be applied accordingly. But that's just my opinion. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. Yes, sir.
Brian Burchell, I'm a resident of View Oil. What I wanted to ask you, Mayor, is whether or not you would do what has happened in Quebec and the Yukon and apply for equivalency agreements that have been struck with Ottawa. And there's documentation on the tables here that 2 agreements have been agreed to in Canada. And given that our system, our current system, is so effective, and you have a database full of the evidence of that, would you make the argument on our behalf to Ottawa to stand down the regulations, just as has been done? We have 2 precedents now where it's been done in Canada already. So would you be willing to, you're concerned about the law, and the law is pressuring you. The same law, 4.21 of the Fisheries Act, allows for application for equivalency agreements. It's called, if we have something that's equivalent in effect, is the phrase they use. Are you willing to take that argument forward on our behalf to see if we can get an equivalency agreement?
Nope, and I'll tell you why. It may be true that our sewage flushes out really far into the ocean. That may be very true. But what's equally true is that the microplastics that are in there, the antibiotics that are in there, the microfibers that are in there, all of the things that are in there are having a harmful impact. And it doesn't matter how far out into the ocean it goes, it's still having a harmful impact. So I am not willing, and I would say that the board is not willing to make that decision. We're very firmly in favor and moving forward about treating our wastewater and our sewage just as soon as we can for the reasons I've stated. Thank you.
Are you aware that around the world where there are secondary sewage treatment systems, what's being proposed here, they see the same problem with microplastics, and their systems do not handle the problem.
Absolutely.
So you're proposing a system that
No.
we already know won't work.
No, I'm not. I don't think no one's proposing secondary treatment. That was an old plan. We're proposing to hear from you about what your priorities are.
The law is for secondary treatment.
That's good. So we'll obey the law, but we can be more ambitious than that. If that's the.
Around the world is they're recognizing that what's required is to not change their secondary sewage treatment system, but to have source control. And the regulations are coming into effect, are being negotiated to put source control into effect to take care of the plastics, not to build secondary sewage treatment systems. I suggest to you what you're proposing is not going forward.
Thank you. Okay, well, I appreciate your comments. And the CRD has a very good source control program that can always be better. And in fact, someone sent me a fantastic article recently on source control at hospitals, that they're cleaning up the wastewater coming out of hospitals so that that is clean, and that's a big impact. So all these things are options, but not treating our sewage is not an option. Sir.
Hello, my name's Raymond. I'm not used to public speaking, so bear with me. In my house, I have a license on my office wall that says I'm licensed to operate sewage treatment plants. So I have some small technical expertise. As I've watched this process go forward, I've started to note that getting any technical information is like hitting a wall. I realize that there's a tremendous amount of expertise going into it, but I don't live near where there's going to be an outfall, but I'm still concerned. From my point of view as a taxpayer, I want to know what I'm going to get for my buck. Am I going to get a microplastic control? Are we going to adventure into another experiment by the government that says, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, we're going to treat everything, and if it doesn't work, we'll ignore what the other companies are doing and the other provinces are doing and the other jurisdictions are doing, and saying, well, maybe we better stay with what's basic. If anybody'd like to talk to me later, I'm quite here, but I'm not used to public speaking. It's been my experience that secondary treatment far surpasses almost anything that goes out there with source control. Source control definitely falls under the label of the local government. When we start talking about where we're going to put a sewage treatment plant, first of all, in my opinion, we have to decide what kind of a plant we're going to build. If we're just going with primary screening, which is going to give us perhaps 85% BOD reduction, which is taking out 85% of the organics, and we're going to pay $1 billion for that. But if we're going to go to 88% BOD reduction, and we're going to pay $2 billion for that, and we're going to suck up some more prime real estate, are we better not to look at this before we start? And from me, looking into it, I'm not getting the technical information that I would like to have just to know where to start. I may wind up on the side that says, oh, we've got to have tertiary treatment, and I may wind up on the side that says, oh no, secondary treatment is the way we need to go. But we're talking a difference of perhaps $1 billion, which is a lot of money. The other thing that I'd like to quickly comment on is resource recovery. I haven't yet found a jurisdiction that can honestly say that they have resource recovery where they've come ahead, energy in, energy out, and come ahead of the game. They just simply haven't been able to do it. Some jurisdictions have been able to recover heat, but they've never really been able to recover methane as a source of fuel for running a motor.
Okay.
Once again, if anybody'd like to talk to me, I'm here and I'm just not used to public.
Thank you. You know what, sir? I think you did a great job. A round of applause, because he's not used to public speaking. And can our engineers raise their hands again? So we've got some technical experts here if you want to dive in with them later on. And to your point, and I'll turn it into a question and answer it. One of the things that we're going to need along the way here is technical expertise, technical information, so that when we start rolling up our sleeves and working on sites, we're doing it not in a vacuum, but with technical experts about what technology could go here, what technology could go here, is it technically feasible, do we need a larger site for a certain technology? There are so many considerations, and we've got the folks that are trained in complexity to help us. Okay, yes?
My name is Shelley McDonald, and I live in Saanich.
Welcome.
Thank you. This first questioner this evening, David Langley, talked about where all Saanich's sewage goes to. But all of Saanich is not within the sewage containment boundary, the sewage enterprise boundary. And so rural Saanich, it does not need to have a voice here because they are not participating in the sewage issue. So my question to you, Lisa, is, are you going to send me home tonight because you can assure me that rural Saanich is not a stakeholder in this issue?
I would defer to my colleagues in Saanich to answer that question.
Yes, you're quite correct. Fundamentally, the costs of this, if it is carried out, will be borne by citizens who live in urban Saanich and who are presently sewered.
Yeah, and the siting of the technology will not be outside of the sewage enterprise boundary.
Well, that will depend upon what sites the Saanich Council chooses to put forward, which has been worked on to date, and will consequently be filtered through the public reaction as to what they have a concern. Now, you should take a look at the sites when they come out. I'm not going to reveal them at this time because it's not appropriate. But, you know, if you find something that is of concern to you in that respect, you most certainly should respond to it.
Okay. So I guess my question is to the people to whom sewage services apply, is it important to you to take responsibility for your own waste, just as we do in rural Saanich on our own properties? And that's all we ask you to do, if you'll consider doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very wonderful question. All right, sir.
John Newcomb, Saanich. I think our current system is not without risk, but I'd say it's low risk in comparison to perhaps some of the options provided or thought about, which are high risk. And I think what I haven't seen in the triple bottom line process in the old system was the criteria of hazard, threat, danger, or safety. And I think anytime we're considering principles or our new system, we have to consider those concerns for the human community. It didn't happen in Viewfield, Esquimalt, where they're going to build an anaerobic digester sludge plant within 10 meters of homes. That's not the way to go. And I think it's having the principles to start with that we don't just look at economic, environmental, and social, but also danger, hazard, safety, and threat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and make sure that those principles end up on the sheet at your table. Okay, have we exhausted questions for now? All right. Watch is on the table. I'm going to suggest, who needs coffee and cookies? No one. Okay, on that note, it's a very keen group. I'm going to invite Amanda back up, and she will walk through what's going to happen for the next hour. And then if you do need coffee or cookies or the washroom, feel free. They're just over there. And really, I would encourage you at your tables. We've had lots of questions about principles, lots of questions about what's important to you. Now is your first opportunity to get those things onto those sheets so we can start using those as the filters once we come back to you and ask you to help us with sites. So over to Amanda.
So we're just going to set up the sort of next portion, and we have a few more minutes than we thought, so that's great. So we've got an hour and 15 minutes for this exercise, and this is really, again, your opportunity to start surfacing those priorities, principles, and even very detailed criteria of the like that we've heard through the questions tonight. So we're hoping that you can join, you'd be willing to join tables. We have very experienced facilitators at each table. These are folks who are not wastewater treatment experts, but they are people who hold important space in their own communities. They are calm, supportive, thoughtful people. Many are community developers. Lots are planners and have that expertise. So they're there to assist the conversation and to help guide the conversation. For those of you who are in the corner over there, if you haven't found a seat at a table, we also have our Eastside Public Advisory Committee members. They may be circulating around. There are citizen stewards, and so they may be coming through and listening in to get a flavor of what's happening at the tables. But if there are those of you in the seats, so I was going to call them the cheap seats, but I won't. Well, I already did. So we've got a couple of extra facilitators, and even though it won't be quite as comfortable, they're happy to create a couple of extra circles in the back there. So we're ready with folks to help if you would like to do that, and if you'd like to just listen in too, you're welcome to do that too. We don't want to force you to participate. As we said, there's a couple of seats up here. We're seeing lots of seats around, so don't be shy. Yes, and we are going to come back in a plenary, so just wanted to walk you through what you can expect. Here's my little graphic that I kind of love. So you don't have to agree on anything to be kind to each other. So I think if we've got any norms tonight, we'd like to hold on to that one. We're going to do two-part exercise, and your facilitators will walk you through this. Now, there are forms on the table. In the past, what you may have seen are people taking notes. What we want to do are to gather two forms of notes. We want you to write your own, so we will transcribe and take all of the things that you write down in response to these questions, and we will report back to you next week on that. And then your facilitators are going to pose some questions. So there'll be a combination of dialogue and your own responses. And if you don't want to land tonight, you can email us. There's an email address on all of the materials if you'd like to email us your response to take some time. So question one is the big question. What is your vision for a successful outcome for sewage treatment? We want you, this is where the principles, the priorities, what does success look like for you? Whether you're speaking on behalf of your community, a residents association, or just you as a citizen, what does that look like? And then we want to dig down a little bit. We want to know what are the specific priorities. So for instance, your specific criteria might be low odor. It might be sited outside in a particular zone. It might be forms of resource recovery. What are your specific criteria? And we'd like you to share those if possible. So through this conversation, there'll be a wealth of information. We're hoping, we haven't wanted to put too much of a kind of a shape to this. We want you to both discuss, share ideas, and then maybe take some time as well to write your ideas down so we can gather them. So we now have about an hour and 15 minutes for that. We're going to be checking in at key points, and towards the end, we're going to ask if there were some key moments or themes that came out. We won't have time for a report back. We have about 140 people apparently here tonight, but what we'll do is we'll get some key ideas that are coming up from the group, and we'll make sure that we capture all of this in as specific a form as possible, and we will be posting it in places that you can see this information so that it is all reported back to you. Okay, so what we're going to do is a very quick slice take on maybe some impressions of conversations that are happening so far. I've had lots of questions about where the data is going to be. We're going to be transcribing all of your forms, so please make sure, if you haven't already, you've given your form to the facilitator at your table or to me. And then there's also an email address if you'd like to go home and think about it, and you can type in and email your observations to us, and the email is on the form as well. So can I get a volunteer, one of the facilitators, to kind of give us maybe some of the key ideas, themes, questions, or challenges that emerged at your table? Yes, Leslie.
A couple of success.
Actually, I'll bring the mics around.
Okay. I'm not sure we can move them.
Yeah,
success criteria that jumped out for us, and there were lots. One was that the cost needs to be completely and clearly understood, and there was lots of components discussed about that, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of comments. The other was the success criteria that public health is truly protected to effectively neutralize toxic components, don't just move them around. And two main concerns that came out. One was that the schedule set by the pursuit of funding could be getting in the way of proper design and planning and could be creating risk. And the other was back to public health, saying because we need clean, non-toxic output to come out of this solution, how do we know what we don't know now? So we didn't know about microplastics, for instance, a couple of years ago. We can make a list of toxic substances to deal with, but the solution has to deal with what we don't know.
Two things jumped out for us. One was the notion of making it beautiful and distributed. And the third was a cluster of things around public awareness, education, engagement, 20-somethings, First Nations, but there were some real gaps on who was involved, and it needs to be an inclusive process.
We had a great discussion at our table. So the umbrella criteria that came out was whole systems approach. So environmental and human systems. So political, social, environment, economic, legal, and ethical. And then there was a whole bunch that fell under that. Environmental considerations, risk assessment, coexisting with the neighborhood, full tertiary treatment, making it public, and there's many others, but that was the primary one. Thank you.
We had a very colorful group, though not maybe in the way you might assume. So I think the three largest themes that came from our table were one that the water is maintained and controlled and owned publicly, and not to explore private partnerships. Resource recovery, optimizing resource recovery was definitely another huge theme. And I think if the third theme that came out of our table was just that it happens and it happens as quickly as possible.
Thank you. And then Marion over here.
Okay, so I have a table that was very much into accountability, affordability, resource recovery, if it is cost effective, really look at the triple bottom line and make sure that it's cost effective, not pie in the sky out there. Measurement. If we are going to be improving water quality, measure it and make sure that the costs are being well used. Of course, aesthetics, odor, noise. In the area of standards, the most appropriate and the highest standards available. Safety was a consideration, earthquakes, tsunami-proof, that sort of thing. Capturing the emerging substances of concern. And then this was our final part of the discussion, continuous engagement, continuous discussion, and have buy-in for the final choice of the site using all of these techniques. It's really important to our group.
Thank you. Lynn?
In our group, there was a lot of discussion about the need for scientifically based evidence and that there needed to be flexibility and adaptability, that we didn't want a rigid system that would get locked in, and some sense of a lot of focus on a cost-benefit analysis in terms of the risks and the cost not only to build it but to run it, and that the money was being well spent and that it was going to be well distributed, and a lot of focus on the need for the timeline to accommodate the process. People are very excited about this process and very positive about the process and very supportive of it. And generally, I think, as well as was source control. That was something that kept coming up in our group and as an important feature, but to stop it before it even gets into the system. And not to move our waste onto some other group. That there was a real concern about the distribution of the concentrated sludge that might come out and where was it going to go. So lots of stuff and a rich discussion.
So I'm not going to repeat some. We talked about most of the things that were already talked about. Just a few things that we also discussed were the flexibility for innovation. So being able to build it in a way that would allow for flexibility for future changes. Being aware and responsible for the impact on neighbors and safety in terms of tsunamis and earthquakes.
So Meg, okay.
All right. So thank you to my table. We had some great conversation this evening. And one of the points that we kept revolving around was access to knowledge. So we have some priorities around what we want to know moving forwards into the consultations. So some of these are around site selection and knowing the sites. That's a big priority for us, as well as knowing the technical science, the hard facts. We'd love to know some of that. Also around treatment choices. A little bit more information around that would be great, as well as cost is really important, and maybe, not necessarily the lowest cost, not necessarily the highest cost, but somewhere in the middle, and figuring that out in terms of what is most effective as well. And I think that covers everything, so thanks again to my table.
Great. Okay.
So there was a criteria that kind of emerged in our group around specific, what is the list of the contaminants of concern, and what are the acceptable, we need to determine what the acceptable levels are for those contaminants of concern, and then really look at what are the treatment options and how are they going to address those contaminants of concern. To what extent are they going to, are each particular treatment option going to reduce those contaminants of concern to acceptable levels. There was another strong theme that came up around making sure that there's really clear information about what are the impacts, anticipated impacts of the different treatment options and what are the associated costs, so that people can make clear, informed decisions about where their money is going and what impact they're going to receive from spending different levels of money before they make those decisions about spending dollars.
Thank you. We'll just do last one then.
Actually, we could just pretty much second and third everything that's already been said, but I just wanted to emphasize a couple of points that came up at our table of non-experts, just concerned and very involved citizens. That one key point was that whatever it is should be a benefit to the neighborhood, neighboring areas, and not a loss in any way, shape, or form. The process to get there should at all times be collaborative, and that the technology that is used should be adaptable for the long term. There's a concern, a deep concern about air and water flows, that they both get taken into consideration. And then there was a lot of discussion about the efficiency of how the wastes would flow in terms of the lay of the land was the phrase used, or how the solids are transported and things like this. So there was some discussion about that kind of efficiency too. There's more, but I think everybody else said it.
Thank you.
Okay, so a round of applause for yourselves. And now a round of applause for your facilitators. Excellent. So thank you all for joining us tonight. A couple of closing thoughts from me. One is that we're going to take the feedback as we've promised. We're going to integrate it, get it up on the website, bring it back literally in handouts as a starting point for the next discussion. But I can promise you that we're not going to implement every single idea that we've heard tonight. And that's really important to say at the outset. Good public process means that we take your input and then we feed it back to you, make sure we got it right, and then we refine a plan or plans going forward, and then we check that back with you, make sure we got that right, and make sure that you were heard. But good public process doesn't mean that every idea gets implemented. And that's part of the trust building that needs to happen. I had a guy come up to me very quietly the other day, and he said, Lisa, I was at Victoria City Council a couple weeks ago, and the decision didn't go my way. I presume it was a land use decision, I didn't ask. He said, but I felt really heard. And that's really what I want to emphasize, that through the next couple of months, we are hearing, we are listening, and together we're going to shape a plan and a project. So that's my honest, upfront approach to what we're going to do. It doesn't mean every idea will get implemented, but we are certainly listening to together, put together ideas and make a plan. My second and final comment is a challenge to each of you. And that is, when you come to the next workshop, bring someone else with you, and if possible, bring somebody in a demographic who you don't see represented here tonight. That's my challenge to you. In your package, it does tell you where the next iteration of these workshops will be, so if you know someone who wanted to come tonight but couldn't, send them there in either Saanich, Victoria, or Oak Bay. And then really be prepared to roll up your sleeves in late May as we start to filter these criteria against sites that will be put forward by your municipal councils. Thank you very much, and have a safe trip home.
I'm Vic Dermond. I'm a Saanich councillor and CRD director, and I'm vice chair of the Eastside committee. What happened tonight was the start of a public engagement process, and we are trying to reverse the process that happened last time. And last time around, I think, somewhat unfortunately, we tended to go out to the public and say, "This is what we're going to do," and get their responses. And this time around, we want to say to the public, this is the issue we face, what are your ideas on it? And begin to collect that information. I think it was a good start tonight. From what I got out of it, I began to hear a lot of the public concerns, a lot of the things they would like to see accomplished. And I also came to realize that we need to provide the public with a lot of information. Not information on what we've already decided, but a lot of basic information that they need to know in order to make informed decisions. And I had quite a number of the public come up to me and say, this is great, I appreciate the opportunity to be heard, but I also need information so that I can make wise comment. But I'm pleased to see the number of people who came out. I'm pleased to see the public interested in being involved in the process. I think that's a very healthy thing.
I'm Shelley McDonald, and I live in rural Saanich, just outside of Prospect Lake. And I came here tonight because I'm interested in ensuring that sewage treatment that is an urban issue stays in the urban setting. I think an event like this evening is a starting place to poll engaged residents in what factors are super important to them to move forward and build principles and values under which the sewage treatment plan will operate under is super important. This event is really great because it has attracted a broad range of people with a broad range of perspectives to talk about issues and opinions that are important to them as individuals. And I think it's important to give those ideas a voice because that has never happened before. The group that I am working with this evening are smart, capable people with a broad range of ideas and opinions who, although they have diverse ideas and opinions, are good listeners and are willing to work together. And I see that maybe that's the best outcome of tonight, is having folks that have been on divergent points working together in the future.
Lisa Helps, Mayor of Victoria and Chair of the Eastside Sewage Select Committee, as well as the Core Area Liquid Waste Management Committee. First public dialogue on this new process. It went exceedingly well, started with a public briefing to give information out, and then really spent the bulk of the evening gathering information in. The reports back from the groups just happened, and I would say that there were nothing surprising, a lot of enthusiasm for moving forward quickly. For the most most part, and getting a project in place, and a desire to be continuously engaged and help us get to a solution. I'm surprised by how much positivity and positive energy there is in the room right now. This has been a contentious project for the last 20 years, and just listen to the buzz behind us. There's positivity, there's a sense that we might actually finally really be able to do something, and I'm very optimistic about that and a little bit surprised as well. The facilitators were great, and what I heard from people participating at the tables is the facilitators really made sure that all voices got heard. There are some strong voices and some quieter voices, and everyone's voice tonight, from what I've heard, the facilitators did a really good job.